Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Little Bit of Woo Woo podcast. Since last week was our first episode and it was such a hit, we're doing 2024 predictions. And because my guest this week couldn't make it, I thought I would go and start with some 2024 predictions that I had. Now, these were on my website. If you go to my blog, you'll see most of these, but I wanted to add a few things to the list and just kind of tell everyone in case you'd rather hear it than read it. First and foremost, I am not a doctor. I am not a real estate agent or lawyer. So don't consider any of this legal or medical advice. If you need those things, go get one. I love lawyers. They're great. But this is good information. And I also will say take it as entertainment rather than gospel, because occasionally I am wrong, just like every other psychic. So with that said, here we go. So 2024, I was seeing was going to be kind of a rough year for a lot of people. Now, rough because people don't like change. I was seeing a lot of change, a lot of kind of confronting things, as in looking at your life and saying, is this really how I want things to be? Is this really what I want things to look like? And how you want things to go later on. So having said that, there's some specific things I see happening. One of them is that I do see there being some sort of hacking incidents. I feel like, and I've already gotten this information intuitively from my own spirit guides, that sometimes when we're told on the news there's a computer glitch, that some system is down, that it was actually a hack of some kind, but they don't want to admit their security was breached. So they say there was some systems glitch or there was some other problem, and really it was a hack. I think they're going to be seeing a lot more of those. I do think we're going to be seeing those specifically in the banking industry. At some point, I do think we may even see the internet down. I think that might be the second half of the year is kind of what I'm seeing. Now, I know other people have predicted this too, because other people are seeing it, but I actually think it's going to happen more the second half of the year. I also don't think it's going to happen all over the country. So I do see people kind of in businesses where have to have the internet, traveling to places to go to get some Wi-Fi. I do see that being an issue. The other thing I see is that there will be, I was seeing an earthquake, interestingly enough, in an unexpected place. We're not talking about California here. I was seeing like the end of the year, maybe the first half of 2025, this might actually be around 2025-ish, some earthquake coming in the Midwest, an unusual place. I mentioned this because I actually have family living in Arkansas and I was seeing them being affected. I was seeing it causing a lot of disruption, maybe not as much structural damage, but disrupting of things, disrupting of supplies moving from place to place within the country. The other thing I think you guys have all been hearing about is that power grid problems. I think it is always a good idea to have what anyone from California would call earthquake storage of food and cash and water in the garage. This isn't something to worry about, but it's just something to just be aware of. I mean, it's always sensible, especially you live in any place that gets weather events, to have those kinds of just things in the garage. I think there will be more of those disruptions than normal. But again, I wouldn't be terribly worried about it. I would also just make sure your jet boiler has an extra canister of fuel. I mean, it's not a keep me up at night thing, but more of a let's just be prepared for a couple of weeks of stuff if we need to. Again, I was seeing the internet being down. I was also seeing with the internet being down, one of the problems was that we're going to discover how many ways we've been using the internet. So you might find that you can't use your credit cards to pay for things for a period of time. I wasn't seeing it's like years or weeks, but I was saying it could be, possibly even a week. In some areas, in other areas, there won't be any problems at all. So that's just something to be aware of. The other thing I was seeing is that there would be more conflict events. I know you don't need a psychic to know that, things are crazy in the world and that there is conflict events, but I think that we will be seeing more of them in 2024 and even spilling into 2025. And I was seeing a lot more anti-Semitism. Now, I know we've seen kinds of racism in earlier, during the pandemic and all of that, but I do see it kind of amping up to a whole new level. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. The other thing I was seeing too was that there would be a lot more conflicts around homelessness, and also immigration. Now, what I was seeing that I thought was interesting was that some communities would just be so fed up with the situation, they would start handling it in ways that are inhumane. And also, interestingly enough, I was seeing that communities would start to tolerate that behavior a little bit more because they were just had too much of it. I do see that being more and more of an issue in 2024, and it being a big issue in the election, which I also feel is going to be kind of off the rails. I do feel that the candidates that we have right now, as of this is recorded in January of 2024, I do think we may get some new candidates, that some of the people that are on the radar right now may not be the ones that end up being the final candidate. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if we don't see like Gavin Newsom instead of Biden, but maybe that's not the case. I was just kind of seeing that there would be a lot of switching and jostling for position and moving around within that major campaign. And I see a lot of people at the end of it just, oh, I wish this was over. I just can't deal with this election year again. People really fed up with the whole process, because I do think it's going to get pretty ugly. Opportunities. So I was seeing that for people who are tapping into their intuition, I definitely am seeing a lot more people doing that. I see a lot more people kind of going with what their soul wants, looking for things that make them feel happier, that satisfy a need within themselves, and being less satisfied with these sort of conventional jobs. Most of our jobs have changed. Most things changed after 2020 anyway. But I do see a lot of people looking more for what their soul is excited about, doing things like YouTube videos like this, trying to monetize more of their hobbies. I do see a lot of people, and I really encourage everyone to do this. I do see a lot of people starting these little side hustles. I do see a lot of people doing it sometimes out of necessity, sometimes just because it's fun. But people are seeing or feeling that the economy is not as stable as maybe what the news is saying. And so they're wanting to have more opportunity to earn money in different ways. And they want to do something creative in themselves. Well, there's a lot of ways of selling stuff online. I mean, you can go to Amazon, you can sell things. So I see a lot of people taking advantage of that and creating new things. I also see new kinds of businesses being opened up, things on the cheap, the disruptor things, like things that started off as one way of doing it, like Uber, right? Taxi cab, becoming something else and evolving into a new way of doing things. I think there will be more of that in 2024, part of it out of necessity, part of it just out of creativity. People want to do something fun. Oh, I could do that better. Why don't I do that better? So if you are the kind of person who's intuitively inclined, I think you're going to be in a better position, especially if you start listening to what messages you're getting. Also, I would say, when you're watching the news, when you're watching regular mainstream media, people are going to be starting to be less and less believing of what they're seeing. I think we're already seeing that anyway. People hear things and go, I just don't think that's true. I just don't feel like that's true. I think there's going to be more skepticism when it comes to watching the news, and for good reason, right? I think it's just going to be harder for them to hide the ways in which we're being manipulated, and not necessarily for nefarious reasons. I mean, TV shows are trying to sell product. They're trying to sell advertisement slots. And if it bleeds, it leads, and it gets more attention and more clicks and more likes. That kind of thing can motivate news to make things seem worse than they really are. So what do you need to do? What do you need to do? Well, I would suggest, just like I said earlier, having kind of an earthquake store, batteries, some cash, water, things that don't need to be heated up on an electric stove if the power goes out. These are always a good idea. And I think it's even more good idea in 2024 to have that thing. I would also suggest, daily spiritual practice. I mean, you've already heard this: yoga, meditation, more creativity, really doing things like just coloring and playing is going to help you tap into your more creative side. So when you've got challenges, and there will be a lot of challenges and a lot of change, you'll be more inclined to tap into the part of you that knows how to fix it, the part of you that has ideas. You're not going to activate that if you're sitting in a filing cabinet going, what do I do? Where's my tax things? You've got to be more creative and playful. The other thing I would suggest, highly recommend in 2024, is you really need to start connecting with your tribe. Now, everybody always thinks, oh, these are the people within my local community. No, not true anymore. That's not true. A lot of people are getting such a wide variety of interests, and they're really opening up to the things they're genuinely interested in, so much so that their tribe may be entirely online. So I would suggest looking at classes that you've been considering, especially if they fall into the woo-woo category. I love that. Things that you're thinking of learning. It's not just for the learning. It's going to be for connecting with community of people that think like you. I also think there is going to be less Democrat Republican separation, I think we'll be seeing a lot more people kind of in the middle who agree with some of this and some of that, and they want some of this other thing. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that, and those people being more vocal. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I do see a lot of people shifting political parties. I think that might even be more prevalent within this election because, the red states and the blue states, it may not be quite as clear as it was before because some of the things have just pissed off both sides, right? Or either side. I do see a lot of health issues coming up for people. I don't mean that people are going to get sick. I just mean that people had been putting some of their personal health things on hold for periods of time because we all know what happened. Now that stuff's coming to the head and people are making those trips to the doctors, and maybe they should have gone last year instead of this year. There will be more of that kind of focusing on getting your health back in order and looking at ways to make that even better. I do feel like the fitness industry might actually start to move more because people are going to really start to really care about their health in a different kind of way because they're starting to see how very, very important it is. I would also suggest, lastly, I really just think you should just pay more attention again to your intuitive hits when you feel like your guides are sending you messages. I will do a whole video on how guides like to send messages, but one of the ways they do it is they do like to mess with your radio, believe it or not. Especially, they told me, one of my spirit guides was telling me that it's actually easier for them to mess with Sirius XM for some reason. I don't know why, but they'll change the channel. If you've got a question, ask the question out loud in your car. And you'd be surprised how often within the next few minutes, sometimes the next day, you'll hear something on the radio talking about this very subject. So just allow for more of these openings, allow for more intuitive information and sort of signs, asking for confirmations. I personally, I like to see it 3 or 4 times. I like to hear it from 3 or 4 different people, not just one. So look for that. And more importantly, I think it's really a time for play, spending more time in play. The more you can play and be creative, the easier things are going to be. And another thing people are really concerned about, getting a lot of calls for this is, am I going to get laid off? Maybe. I don't see like 20% unemployment. I was seeing maybe 10% unemployment at the most, maybe even less. That means that 90% of the people who have a job are still going to have it. So, if I was also seeing that more likely the people that are going to get laid off are going to be the ones that are less flexible. If you're one of those, it's like, sure, I'll answer the phone if that's what needed. Sure, I'll do whatever's needed. I think you're going to be less likely to get laid off. But I do think that they're kind of, companies are looking at the people who are very rigid and say, it's not in my job description, I'm not going to do it, only if I'm going to get paid a lot more. Those people, I don't think are going to have as good of a time staying in those jobs. I think it'll be better situation for the ones that are willing to do more and are willing to kind of go outside of the box. So I hope this was helpful. And I know, in spite of kind of some of the things that I said that weren't so pleasant, I do see it being a really good year for a lot of people. And I do see, especially people who are entrepreneurs, I see them making changes and adjustments to their businesses that make them even more viable. And I see people doing things that are going to create more prosperity. The last question that comes up a lot is the stock market going to go up or down? Yes. There you go. Is the housing market going to go up or down? Yes, but mostly down. I actually do see more deals in the housing market in 2025 than in 2024. But again, this is one of those situations where you need to talk to a real estate agent that you trust, because every market is different. I'm talking about in general terms. There's still places in the country where the housing market is going to go up. So that's what I'm seeing. But I actually, if you're asking about, if you're wondering when you're going to get a deal, I think they're more likely to get a deal in 2025. That's kind of what I was seeing. So there you go. Hope that was helpful. And if you want any more information, visit my website at jillkthomas.com. Bye, guys. Bye.